The air buzzed with the clink of glasses and the low hum of conversation, but all I could focus on was the way Tom's eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed. To us, he said, raising his glass across the small, candlelit table at Giovanni's, our go-to Italian spot since our honeymoon days in Rome. I echoed the sentiment, the warmth from the wine spreading through me, feeling like we were the only two people in the world. The next morning, I stumbled out into our backyard, coffee in hand, only to freeze at the sight before me. Tom, dirt smudged on his cheek, stood amidst a sea of daisies and sunflowers, my favorites. For us, he said, mirroring last night's toast, to grow and shine together. I didn't think I could love him more, yet here we were. Raj's barbecue a week later had us weaving tales of our past adventures and future dreams into the fabric of our friends' laughter. We were dubbed the Dynamic Duo, a title we wore proudly, basking in the glow of shared love and ambition. When Tom's promotion came through, it wasn't just his victory, it felt like ours. I organized a small celebration at home, inviting our closest circle. Watching him bask in their congratulations, I felt a surge of pride so strong it was almost tangible. Our anniversary was the cherry on top. I had found the perfect gift, a watch with our wedding date engraved on the back. So you'll always have time for us, I joked as he unwrapped it, the look of genuine surprise and joy on his face making all the effort worth it. Life seemed to be on an endless upswing until Lucas moved in next door. We welcomed him with a dinner, the neighborly thing to do. He was easygoing, with a charm that was undeniable. I caught myself laughing a little too hard at his jokes, a flutter in my stomach I hadn't felt in years. That flutter didn't go away. Instead, it grew every time Lucas and I bumped into each other. Whether discussing neighborhood events or borrowing a cup of sugar, his presence became something I looked forward to, a guilty pleasure I couldn't deny. I tried to shake the feeling, reminding myself of the life Tom and I had built together, but Lucas's charisma was like a siren call I found increasingly hard to resist. Each chapter of our lives seemed perfectly laid out, a storybook tale of love and partnership. Yet, as I found myself drawn to Lucas, I couldn't help but wonder if every story needed a twist, unaware of how much this twist would cost. I never thought a simple coffee could feel like an act of rebellion. Yet there I was, sitting across from Lucas at a cafe on the other side of town, our conversation a blend of trivial neighborhood updates and charged silences. The thrill of secrecy pulsed through me, a guilty pleasure I hadn't anticipated. We should do this more often, Lucas said, his smile lighting up his face, and I found myself agreeing before I could consider the consequences. Later, the weight of what I was dabbling in hit me. I found myself pouring out my conflicted feelings to Maya, my closest friend. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted, my voice a mix of excitement and guilt. Maya listened, her face a mask of concern and surprise. Be careful, she warned. Things like this, they don't just end well. Tom started to notice the distance between us, the late nights I blamed on work, the distracted moments. He attributed it to job stress, never suspecting the true source of my turmoil. We'll get through this, he assured me, wrapping me in a hug that felt like it was from another lifetime. Lucas's texts started to become more frequent, each message a little more daring than the last. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop myself from replying, drawn in by the allure of something new and dangerous. The neighborhood block party was where lines were crossed. Lucas and I found ourselves alone, hidden by the shadows of the park's farthest corner. When he kissed me, I didn't pull away. Instead, I kissed him back, a part of me surrendering to the whirlwind of feelings I had tried so hard to ignore. Our secret meetings became more regular, cloaked under the guise of yoga classes. Just heading to yoga, I'd say, leaving Tom with a peck on the cheek, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and guilt. The bubble burst when Derek, one of Tom's friends, saw Lucas and me together. The casual cafe meeting wasn't so inconspicuous after all. Tom should know about this, Derek said after confronting me, his voice firm, the threat of exposure hanging over me like a dark cloud. Each step deeper into this affair felt like a descent into chaos, my actions driven by a mix of fear, desire, and a desperate longing for something I couldn't even name. As suspicion and secrecy wove their way through my life, I couldn't help but wonder how far I was willing to go, and what it would cost me in the end. The second the front door clicked shut behind Tom, my heart sank into my stomach. The air was thick with tension, a prelude to the storm I sensed brewing on the horizon. We need to talk. Tom's voice was steady, but the undercurrent of hurt was unmistakable. My palms were sweaty as I turned to face him, the lie ready on my lips. I was with Maya, just lost track of time, I stammered, avoiding his gaze. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth was a poison I wasn't ready to administer. Tom's silence was deafening. He just stood there, staring at me with a look I couldn't decipher. It was the calm before the inevitable tempest. Then explain this, he said, his voice breaking as he handed me a book of romantic poetry, the one Lucas had gifted me, found hidden away in my car. My heart raced, panic setting in. It's just a book, Tom. It doesn't mean anything, I lied again, but the conviction in my voice was as flimsy as my excuse. I can't do this, Em. I need the truth, he implored, his eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I could give. The dam broke, and the truth spilled out in a rush. Yes, There was something with Lucas. But it meant nothing. I swear it meant nothing. The words hung between us, a chasm growing with every passing second. Tom's face was a mask of pain and betrayal, a look that would haunt me. I want to fix this, I said, desperation seeping into my voice as I reached for him, but he stepped back, putting distance between us. End it, completely, or I'm gone. Tom's ultimatum cut through the air, leaving no room for negotiation. My heart ached, torn between the life I had with Tom and the exhilaration I felt with Lucas. It took every ounce of courage I had to face Lucas, to tell him it was over. I wanted to salvage the ruins of my marriage, to rebuild on the ashes of my betrayal. But as I walked away from Lucas, his words echoed in my mind, a siren's call, you'll be back. You can't deny what's between us. I was resolute in my decision to end the affair, to fight for my marriage with Tom. But Lucas wouldn't let go easily. His messages kept coming, each one a dagger twisting in the wound I had inflicted on my marriage. As I stood there, phone in hand, Lucas's latest message lighting up the screen, I realized the magnitude of my mistake. I had risked everything for a fleeting passion, believing in my naivety that love would conquer all. But as the chasm between Tom and me grew wider, I couldn't help but wonder if some things were beyond repair. The moment I saw Tom's face, I knew he'd seen the messages. His jaw was set, a storm brewing in his eyes as he held up his phone, displaying a chain of texts from Lucas that I'd hoped he'd never see. How long, Em? His voice was a low growl, laced with a betrayal so deep it cut straight through me. I reached out, a futile attempt to bridge the chasm that had opened up between us. Tom, please, let me explain. But he was already moving, his movements mechanical, as he began to pack his bags. Each fold of his clothes was a punctuation mark to the end of our story. I can't do this, Em. I can't be with someone I don't trust. His words were final, a door closing on us. I watched, helpless, as he left, the soft click of the door echoing like a gunshot in the silent house. The note he left was brief, its words etching a permanent scar on my heart. I can't stay where my heart isn't safe. Desperation clawed at me. I called, texted, pleading for him to give us another chance, but my messages went unanswered, each silence a hammer to my hope. The fallout was swift and merciless. Friends we'd laughed with, shared meals with, suddenly turned cold. Invitations dried up, and my phone, once a hub of activity, became a monument to isolation. At Raj's next barbecue, my absence was felt in whispers, my seat empty, as they all sided with Tom, the wrong party. Work became a minefield. Hushed conversations would halt as I approached, and sympathetic looks were quickly averted. My affair had not only shattered my personal life but had begun to crack the foundations of my professional one too. Lucas, the eye of this hurricane, became distant, a shadow of the man who'd whispered sweet nothings and promised adventure. As the reality of our actions set in, he retreated, leaving me to navigate the wreckage alone. This is too much, Em, he said, his voice void of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to. I didn't sign up for this. To cap it all, my family's disappointment was a heavy cloak around my shoulders. We raised you better than this, Emily. My mother's voice, once warm and comforting, now carried a coldness that made me shiver. My father couldn't even meet my eyes, his silence louder than any words of rebuke. Left to sift through the ruins of my life, I was a pariah in my own world, my choices having alienated me from everyone I loved. The vibrancy of my life with Tom had faded to gray, the silence of the house a constant reminder of the cost of my betrayal. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized I was truly alone, the weight of my actions a suffocating blanket under which I was trapped, with no clear path to redemption. The moment Tom walked out the door, a part of me naively believed we'd find our way back to each other. That belief shattered when I sat down to pay the bills and realized the depth of the financial chasm his absence left. Numbers on a screen never seemed so cold, nor had I felt so unprepared. How did we even get here? I muttered to myself, scrolling through the endless list of expenses we used to manage together. Then came the knock that echoed like doom through the empty halls of our once shared home. The delivery man handed me an envelope, the stark, formal type you never want to receive. Tom had initiated divorce proceedings, citing infidelity. The words on the page blurred as reality hit me like a freight train. This was really happening. Nights were the hardest. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now stood as a mausoleum of our love. I'd wander from room to room, each corner a reminder of a memory we'd created, now a ghost in the echoing silence. Driven by desperation and a glimmer of hope, I penned a letter to Tom. My words spilled onto the page, a mixture of apologies, pleas, and promises of change. I poured my soul into that letter, believing it could bridge the chasm between us. But when it returned, unopened, with "Return to sender" stamped across the front, the finality of his decision hit me. We were beyond repair. As if to twist the knife further, I learned through the grapevine of Lucas's new relationship. The sting of betrayal was sharp, leaving me to wonder if I was ever truly valued, or just a diversion. The realization that I was alone, truly alone, in this mess I'd made, was suffocating. Depression settled in like a fog, thick and unyielding. Days blended into nights, and I found myself trapped in a cycle of regret and self-loathing. The vibrant woman I once was seemed like a stranger, and the reflection in the mirror was of someone I no longer recognized. How did I let this happen? The question haunted me, a constant refrain to the melody of my downfall. Each chapter of this story was a step further down a path I never intended to take, leading me to a place of profound loneliness and despair. The cost of my choices was clear, measured not just in the silence of the house or the chill of the bed at night, but in the very essence of who I had become. Lost in the wreckage of a life I once cherished, I struggled to find a way forward, the weight of my decisions a heavy shroud I couldn't seem to shed. The day I lost my job was the day everything came crashing down. "Emily, your performance hasn't been up to par," my boss said, not unkindly, but the finality in his voice made my stomach churn. Walking out of the office, box in hand, the weight of my failure was a tangible thing, dragging me down. It was more than just a job. It was the last semblance of normalcy in my life, now gone. The financial strain without my income was immediate and suffocating. Bills piled up, reminders of a life I could no longer afford. Tom's absence not only left an emotional void but a financial chasm I couldn't bridge. The decision to sell our house, the home we had built together, felt like signing away the last piece of us. Moving day was a blur. I wandered through each empty room, the echoes of laughter and whispered promises hanging in the air. Closing the door behind me for the last time, the finality of it hit me like a physical blow. I was leaving behind more than just a house. I was leaving behind my life as I knew it. My new apartment felt foreign, a stark contrast to the warmth and love that had filled my previous home. The walls were bare, the rooms filled with the silence of my solitude. I tried to see it as a fresh start, but the past clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake. The universe seemed to twist the knife further when I saw Tom at a local coffee shop. Our eyes met briefly, but he looked away, his indifference a clear message. I was a stranger to him now, our years together reduced to a cold shoulder in a crowded cafe. The pain of that realization was sharp, a reminder of everything I had lost. When the divorce papers finally came, marked with the stark black of legal finality, I signed my name with a trembling hand. The ink was barely dry when the wave of sadness hit me, a deep, aching sorrow for the death of my marriage. In the quiet of my apartment, surrounded by boxes and the remnants of my former life, I began to truly reflect on the choices I had made. The affair, the lies, the destruction of my marriage, all of it was a chain of decisions that I had made, each link a step further away from the person I once was. The journey from betrayal to the aftermath was a road paved with pain, regret, and loss. But it was also a path to self-discovery. In the depths of my despair, I began to understand the consequences of my actions, the ripple effect of pain I had caused. It was a bitter pill to swallow, recognizing my own role in the unraveling of my life. Yet, in that recognition, there was a glimmer of hope. Understanding my mistakes was the first step towards forgiveness, forgiveness of myself, and perhaps, one day, forgiveness from those I had hurt. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and the daunting task of rebuilding. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for a new beginning. From the moment I woke up, the weight of my reality pressed down on me, a constant reminder of the consequences of my choices. I was determined to start making amends, though the path to forgiveness seemed insurmountable. My first step was reaching out to friends and family, each call a mix of hope and fear. "I'm sorry," became my mantra, but the reception was chilly, the damage too deep for simple apologies to heal. Finding a new job was next on my list, a necessity now more than ever. The job I landed was a far cry from where I'd been, both in position and pay. Sitting in my small, stark office, I couldn't help but see it as a daily reminder of how far I'd fallen. Trying to rebuild my social life was like navigating a minefield. Attempts at making new friends were met with polite smiles and noncommittal responses. My past, it seemed, had a longer reach than I'd anticipated, leaving me isolated in a crowd. The stress and loneliness began to take a physical toll. My health deteriorated, forcing me to confront yet another facet of my life that had spiraled out of control. The doctor's advice was clear. "You need to take care of yourself, Emily. Seek help." And so, I found myself sitting in a therapist's office, unpacking the emotional baggage I'd accumulated. Therapy was a lifeline, offering me the tools to start navigating my way through the mess I'd made. Slowly, I began to see small improvements. A kind word from a colleague, a new acquaintance smiling genuinely at my joke, these moments became my beacons of hope. The anniversary of Tom's departure was a day I'd dreaded, a stark reminder of everything I'd lost. I found myself drawn to our old neighborhood, walking the familiar streets wrapped in nostalgia and regret. Seeing our house, now home to another family, I felt an ache for the life we'd built, now just a memory. The hardest blow came unexpectedly, on a day that had started like any other. I saw Tom at the park, his arm around someone new, a woman who radiated happiness. They were laughing, lost in each other, a mirror of a past that once belonged to us. In that moment, the finality of our end hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just our marriage that I'd lost. It was the future we'd never have, the forgiveness I'd never receive. Standing there, a silent observer to his newfound happiness, I understood the true cost of my actions. Some decisions are irrevocable, their consequences shaping the course of our lives in ways we can't foresee. As I walked away, the lesson was clear. Not all wounds heal, and not all mistakes can be undone. But even in the midst of loss, there's a path forward, one small step at